Nestled in the foothills of southeast Missouri, Wappapello Lake is one of the oldest of the United States Army Corps of Engineers water resource projects, providing over 44,000 acres of land and water for recreational and natural resource management purposes. Since its completion in 1941, Wappapello Lake and Dam has reduced the amount of flood damage to thousands of acres of farmland and timberland along the St. Francis River. The floods that plagued the United States in the early part of the 1900s propelled the federal government to increase its involvement in flood control. The Flood Control Act of 1936 authorized construction of the Wappapello Dam. Prior to construction, several major floods severely damaged farmland in southeastern Missouri and northern Arkansas between 1926 and 1945. Senator John Overton sponsored the Flood Control Act of 1936. It was the first general legislation in United States history to establish a national policy on flood control. This act authorized construction of 250 projects and appropriated $310 million to initiate construction as well as in numerous examinations and surveys. In August 1938, the War Department ordered construction of a project which included a dam and reservoir at Wappapello, Missouri on the St. Francis River. This project had two features never tried before in the Memphis District Corps of Engineers. First, the project created a reservoir designed to hold the floodwaters of the St. Francis River and release them in a manner not to exceed the capacity of a levied floodway below the dam. Second was a siphon at Marked Tree, Arkansas, enabling the water to pass over a leveed section of the St. Francis River. When finished, the earthen dam was 2,700 feet long at the crest, maximum height of 109 feet. Newspaper articles during the period of 1936 through 1941 gave an insight into the dam construction progress. Many of the workers had no connection to the Corps of Engineers prior to the construction of Wappapello Dam.
My name is Charlie Marler, and I worked, about a year and a half. Jim Hammock asked me if I was having any luck, and I told him no, which I thought it put in Wick was the only one here. He told me to try Howard. He said they've just started. And he showed me Bill Bueller. He told me to go and ask him for a job, and he'd speak a word for me. I went over and asked him for a job. Mr. Hammock walked up and said something to him. I still don't know today what he said, but he got me a job anyhow. I stayed there till it got done.
Well, my name's Virgil Bounds. Altogether, I worked probably about 13 years for a government job. They started work over there, I just went over there and got a job. Oh, I done everything around that job. I'll drive trucks and build boat docks and everything else.
Sure am Nodell. The only telephone in Wappapello, and the Corps had to use the telephone that we had at the store we had. And that's how I got acquainted with them, and finally decided when I sold the store, they offered me a job, and I went to work for them.
Estel Climo Elledge lived here, and Vic run a store there, and there was Horn Hands, and he got me a job, and I traded with him. And so I worked there off and on. I wasn't a steady hand all the time, but I helped pour concrete and help shovel the cement, bulk cement out of the boxcars, and in other words, the dirty work.
My name is Eldon William Null. I helped clear the area in there where the dam is now, where it was constructed. I went to work for a man by the name of Morris. He contracted the moving of the timber in the area where the dam is and below the dam, all the area. He contracted to move the timber out, get it ready for the rest of the procedure.
Carl Dixon. Well, I lived in the area and knew when it started and all that. I was pretty young. Old enough then. I went applied for a job and got it.
Herman P. Wilfon. See, I was born and raised out here, and at that time, work was really tight in this country. And I just came down here and put in an application. And the line really, your application didn't mean much because really there were more people standing in line over there for employment than there was working on the dam at that time about every morning. That's right, and then another thing, if you knew somebody that was already working, sometimes they plug for you or help you get on.
Edgar Irvin Atnip. The talk was, for the longest, they took planes, took pictures, we'd watch the plane, and we knew the dam was scheduled to go in, but we had a friend that became a engineer, and he was over the clearing. I worked for him.
The big announcement concerning the construction of the Wappapello Dam received mixed emotions from many of the local residents who lived along the St. Francis River.
I think the most of them was for it, on account to bring work in here, you see. It brought work in here. They were some against it, all right. But I'd say the majority of the people was for this dam.
There were a lot of people that kind of sitting on the fence in between. It seemed like they looked more to the government then than they do this day and time. If the government thought it was all right to build it, and that a lot of the people understood, see, this was put in for strictly a water control. And at that time, when this river broke over in the high time, well, it flooded out many, many more acres below us than it did up the river here. You had your happiest people below the dam to see. They understood that you were going to control this flooded water.
My name is William S. Gillian. Some of them was happy about it. Some of them weren't too happy. I mean, I remember since I've lived here, they turned the water loose up here and drowned a bunch of crops out down below.
Several of the old towns vanished or were moved due to the dam construction.
There's some of them that just absolutely just vanished. Greenville was moved, and I think quite a bit of Wappapello was moved. But one thing I'd like to mention, I went back in history, and the town names here, some of them, was, the way I understand it, was an Indian chief and his wife and 3 sons. That was Puxico, Wappapello, and Ojibwe, Shawnee, and Tuskegee. Tuskegee is vanished. It isn't there no more. Ojibwe was a small place on the railroad. It isn't there no more. And Shawnee, is gone. And we have Wappapello and Greenville left in the area here.
When they built this dam, they had to move. I thought, that's like, yes, and Greenville was a beast, and it probably, I don't know, 1,000 or something like that. Showing you probably 400 or 500. And then other little Tuskegee, they had a small town too, the first one and another.
This was a major project. People were hired from everywhere to get the job done. They were scattered from one end of the basin to the other.
Well, one time I worked up there on the clearing, there was about 80 of us at one time. Of course, that wasn't all the workers. That's just Leonard Fox run the job then, and he was over Leonard and so forth. And I think there was 80-some one time clearing up here on the lake, between here and Shawnee and so forth.
I really don't know how many they. I do know they brought a lot of those equipment, Euclids and stuff in here from Memphis, and drivers came with them. They drove them up here from Memphis. They were mounted on rubber. And then we had local people that run dozers and cranes. Then this labor force, why, it was kind of up and down, depending on what job you was doing at that time.
Because of the St. Francis River and the rich woodlands, farming and logging were the main sources of income.
It was just for most of the farmers around, and of course we had them, there's that ties, they haul ties in here, mining crops, to make a living like that too. And but it was one of the finest hunting, and they had the finest hunting and fishing that any country could have.
Well, at that time, I don't know of any timber that went to market off from the dam. It was either burnt or tied down in the stream with wire. Of course, they tied it down there. The plan was for fish beds, which they still do that in the stream. But most of it was burnt. And a lot of it was piled by hand, and we used equipment on some of it. A lot of that was low land out there, and you couldn't get equipment around, especially in the wintertime.
During these drawdowns here on the lake, the stumps are still sticking up high. And I worked several winters up there when we had the drawdown to cut the stumps off, you know, where the boats wouldn't hit them. And they're still there, and they're just as solid as the day they was when the tree was cut off of them.
There were a few businesses in the Shionia and Wappapello area prior to the dam construction.
I've seen 3 or 4 stores in Old Shawnee. That's one we got here at Wappapello. There used to be a mercantile store there, and Wind Baby, and there was a Ward store there one time. Old man Albert Ward from Greenville had a store there.
Ed Osmond had a store here, and Harry Womack had a store here in Wappapello. There's about 2 more stores in Wappapello at that time.
There were 4 stores here at that time. Well, no, most stores back then was, they called them general stores. They'd have anything from bib overalls, you know, down to sugar, salt, whatever. And carried a little feed and hardware, nails, steeples, and what common use was in the area.
The Great Depression did not affect everyone in the same degree. It was just about coming to an end.
But it was bad, real bad. There were a lot of people didn't have no jobs. And when they did have a job, they didn't make much money. See, the Depression was letting up just a little about the time they started this dam work down here. They set up a PWA system and everything. Really, the Depression in this area here, I didn't think hurt the people as bad as the drought. See, of course, the drought and the Depression was all tied together because the people lived on their type of income, farming and the timber work. Of course, when Depression came along, why they quit buying railroad ties. Of course, they quit buying building railroads.
And people come in here to buy some of the lots when they saw the dam was going to go in, and people came here interested in buying lots. They sold some of the lots for $150 a piece, and it went real cheap for a while. And I'd say during the construction of the dam, the lots went up from $150 a lot to around $1,000, $2,000 a lot.
Modern utilities, such as running water and electricity, were not readily available to everyone.
Pretty rugged. All the buildings, there wasn't very few people had water, and a lot of them didn't even have electricity over here at that time. They just stored up shacks, moved in, got a job and worked, or stayed at a boarding house, farmhouses and everything else.
There were 2 main contractors involved with the construction of this project: Hallett Construction Company of Minnesota and Porter DeWitt of Poplar Bluff, Missouri.
I worked for both the Hallett Construction Company and Porter DeWitt during the course of the job. The Hallett Construction Company was the prime contractor on the Wappapello project, and they were out of Minnesota. And Mr. Hallett, who lived in Minnesota, was the owner of the Becker County Sand and Gravel operation in Minnesota, which, as I recall, was a road building company in that area. And they operated under the name of Hallett Construction Company here, which later became United Construction Company were the same personnel. The responsibility of the prime contractor was to follow the plans and specifications set out by the Corps of Engineers. And we were under the supervision of the Corps at all times as to the accuracy and the quality of work. And my responsibility was not inspection of the farm. My responsibility was to see that they were placed on the proper lines and proper grades. The Corps of Engineers inspected everything, and they held us, as I recall, on lines and grades for concrete work. They held us to within 1/4 of an inch, which is pretty difficult to do at times.
They were always in a hurry, all supervisors, and people worked hard back at that time. Yeah, I knew, especially on the rock picking, I worked with some older fellas, and they stayed bent over so long, I'd try to relieve them, you know, and give them a pick or something so they could dig them out to help out a little. But it was just quite a slave job, yes. I tell you, that people didn't mess around in them days. When you went out there, you worked. The only time you got off on a break, you got to go into the water tank and get you a drink. Well, 30 cents an hour. That's what the laborers got. And my boss had got 50 cents an hour when I worked over there.
I'll tell you, it was rough. It was real bad. I've never worked any harder on anything in my life. You couldn't stop. You weren't allowed to stop. You could stop and drive a wedge when you're sawing. Otherwise, you went right ahead. The only time you stopped was moving from one tree or one stump or whatever it is to the other. Now, listen, you worked hard, and it was rough. But that was, for me, it was from 75 cents a day. I went to a 240. And, well, I thought we were going to get rich. And I've been working 10 hours a day for 75 cents. I worked 8 hours a day. I thought I was going to get rich. I didn't know what to do with the time. It was just heavy.
It was a hard day's work. That's one of the things. I know that. Yeah, we worked. We had to work hard. And I know I'd come in and my clothes were wringing wet with sweat. I mean, shoes even. So you don't see work like we had then, now. That's for sure. First started to working, I was making about $90 a month, but they fed me and a place to sleep.
Word athletes, whenever we started work, well, naturally that was more money than we used to. I was working for $1.50 a day, and we were getting about $2.40 on this, in which it was hard work, mighty hard work, but for the difference, well, we could stand to do it.
I worked as common labor part of the time, then I got up a little higher as I went through. I finally got up to 50 cents an hour. Started out at 30 cents. I worked in the concrete mostly, then done some clearing work on the dam way up there.
Vernon Vineyard Templeton. 12-hour day was as long as any of them worked. Now, they did work the job 24 hours, but not individuals didn't work 24 hours.
The grade of this first haul road on the west side of the control structure was so steep that trucks were only half loaded. With a project of this magnitude and the ever-present dangers that each worker encountered, fatalities and accidents amazingly were at a minimum. However, medical assistance was always present.
One time there was a big limb fell when we was cutting a tree. It broke off about hitting me in the top of the head. And I lost 1 day's work. And then another time I was jumping a ditch with an axe. And I run into a vine, grapevine, and I split my left leg open. And they took me down to give me first aid.
They took me down to Lucy Lee Hospital, was showed it up.
We had a contract with what's now Lucy Lee Hospital, Dr. McFeeters, and he sent a man out here by the name of Delisle. And he was just well, he wasn't a doctor, he was an intern, maybe, I don't know. But he was stationed there all the time. He had a house right beside of mine, up there by the company office. And he was there 24 hours a day. You could always get a hold of him.
The first thing I knew, I felt the fingers hit the shiv on top of at the end, the big shiv that the cable run over. Well, I jerked my hand sideways just instinctively, and in the maneuver I fell off of the stick. The dipper stick fell to the ground and left my glove and this one finger in the glove with the leaders pulled out of my arm. Right. One man was killed. He was an oiler on one of the big shovels that dug the dirt out, and they were in a close area where there was a very little bit of room. And this oiler, for some unknown reason, we don't know why, but he walked around between the machine and the bank that he had dug, and this man turned around, and there were not room between the bank and the machine when it turned around, so it killed him, it crushed him. There was another accident when we were working, when the drag line was working on the bluff sections and steps. And this time the oiler got killed for the simple reason that the man, the operator, for some reason or another, he lost control. And I did turn over one of their big trucks with a load of dirt. I got going on a shoulder, and I met the grader, and of course the grade was too soft, and I lost it and turned it over.
Proper maintenance of the construction equipment played a key role in preventing downtime due to equipment failures. It was extremely important to keep the equipment in top-notch shape.
If something happens to one of them, even a flat tire, they would come to me. I'll get in touch with the tire people, and they'd come out and fix it. We kept a small amount of parts. Any shop that size would have. But you always break down something that you don't have the parts for, and you've got to order it. Well, that was part of my job, too, to get the stuff and get it there as quickly as we could and get the stuff back on the job so it moved some dirt. Night shift had mechanics, and the day shift had mechanics. And then you'd have some, I'll say, laborers. They were workers, really, back in those days, to help these mechanics. The mechanics were the smart people that knew what to do, and they'd have some boys helping. There was about 6 bulldozers. We had scrapers, cats and scrapers. We saw them operating. We had some 631s, I believe, on this job. They're rubber-tired scrapers. We had the 2 big shovels. We had a couple small cranes that mounted on rubber. A dirt hauler, you load it. It don't load itself. You load it with a shovel, dump it in it, then you haul it off, run it off down there, and the bottom has a door in it. You trip it, the doors come open, the dirt hauls right out wherever you want it. And you go back and you get you another load. You can call it, does some different things, I guess. It's a sheep's foot roller is what they call it. It tamps the dirt down. You dump the dirt and spread it with a dozer or a blade, and then you run over it with a sheep's foot roller, and that tamps it down tight.
They drilled a lot of test holes all over the place, finding out what percent was rocks and what percent was dirt and sand and so forth. They did a lot of test boring.
The ones that they drilled, they just drilled them with a rig like you drill a well or an oil well or anything. But then they dug test holes, and you just dug them. So I think they's about, looked to me like about 8 by 8. And some of those they had the wall up, but they didn't go that deep with those. They hit an artesian well that run a big stream out all the time they was building the dam there below the river. run it out direct into the river.
Dangerous manual labor continued throughout the construction process, which consisted of pouring of concrete, riprap placement, river channel diversion, dredging and drilling. Explosives were used to help break some of the rocks. Much shooting was required to satisfy the inspectors. The dynamite was carefully placed and tamped, the electrical charges used to set it off.
We had instructions, of course, concerning safety, but nothing compared to what you would run in today on any project comparable to that.
Yeah, some of it I didn't like to climb high. I didn't like that a bit. The foreman told me one time, he said, Elliot, he said, you're a good hand, a good man, he said, on the ground, but he said, you ain't worth a goddamn, he said, upstairs.
I think around one time they took with our case around 40 tons we let off. See, we set it off with electric charge. See, there's a good long ways that spillway was down through there. And it's all solid rock. And we drill these holes down as the footing that they would want to shoot it, you see. Then we tap that full of dynamite. Well, that wagon drill had about a 2-inch hole, and the jackhammer was just about an inch. Well, they used the dirt out of the hill to build the dam itself, and they used the rock for the riprap to keep the erosion down after the dam was built. We had the rock, after we sheep-footed it, we had to go over it if there's any rock bigger. I believe they had either a 3 or 4-inch limit on the sides of the rock. You had to pick it out and throw it in the truck. A lot of these rocks under this riprap on this dam are real small rocks, then picked up a hand out of the dirt.
That was hauled in by truck and dumped down the face of the dam. Then it had to be very carefully placed as to slope and grade, so that it presented a uniform surface, more or less, when you look down the face of the dam. It wasn't just dumped in there haphazardly. And it was, of course, the purpose of it was to protect the face of the dam from washing from the heavy rain, and also from action of the lake itself.
A temporary 300-foot bridge for hauling over the river was constructed. The old river channel came through the lowest place below the dam where the ball diamond is now located. It is known as the tow drain. Forms for the tunnel roof, as designed by Walter Groshon, worked successfully, forming a tunnel known as the conduit. Lake water flows through the conduit before reaching the outlet channel, known as the spillway. After the diversion of the river, construction of the Wappapello Dam began with the spillway channel, including the construction of wing walls and baffle blocks.
The wing wall was 18 inches at the top. Well, back in there, they're 18 inches down there too, but when you come out here to where them baffle boxes is, they're probably 8 feet across there at the bottom, but they tapered them off to 8 feet at the top. I mean, 18 inches. I imagine they're 6 feet and maybe 8 feet wide at the bottom. So you see they flare out. They flare out, and it's flared out mostly on the outside of it than it is on the inside, because that puts more pressure over there on that side where the dirt is.
The baffle blocks were the structures at the outlet end of the gatehouse and outlet tunnel, and the purpose of the block was to kill the velocity and force of the water coming out of the discharge tunnel, and they called it a stilling basin. And the idea was to follow the meaning of the word, was to still the velocity of the water and change it to turbulence and agitation in a pool at the end of the discharge tunnel.
The top 30 feet of excavation of the control structure was almost too hard without blasting. Many huge boulders were encountered. Therefore, larger amounts of explosives were used. The gatehouse was constructed on top of 3 steel gates that act as doors to the conduit. Each of these gates is made of solid steel and weighs approximately 20 tons and were transported here by train.
But when we got through with the tunnel, we went on the gatehouse and built it. And we worked all winter long on it too. And then went in the spillway in the spring.
You see, they had the 75 kV generator there, and it was going to furnish electricity for the people who lived on the dam, Mr. Burley and myself, from Memphis. The office at Memphis controlled us to give us a schedule when the lake reached a certain elevation, where the gates were supposed to be in a certain position. We had a gauge there that told us what the elevation of the lake was, and then we had a chart that told us where the gates should be at that elevation. And then we would just punch the buttons over there and raise or lower the gates at that time.
The drag line played a major role in the excavation work. Not only did it break rock from the hillsides by being used as a scraper, but also was used to load the dirt and rocks into dump trucks. It was used in closing off the old river channel and other dredging activities. After the gatehouse was built on top of the conduit, the river channel was rerouted through the gatehouse. Construction of the massive concrete emergency spillway was no simple task. The first compacted fill was in the excavated bed of the Redmond Creek area. However, stripping blue muck from this area was as deep as the drag line could go. The emergency spillway was poured in sections due to its size.
The only involvement that I had with the emergency spillway structure was setting the grade and slope for the downstream bed of the discharge channel. Was washed out completely within a year after the construction.
Was where we got the dirt, and we just taken every bit of the dirt that we could get out of there, clear over to the Redmond, clear across the ridge that leads down to the gatehouse. There was a ridge went all the way down through there. It's protruded out into the St. Francis River basin. We cut that channel all the way across there, and the purpose was to get dirt, also to open up a place that they put the concrete emergency overflow.
During World War II, temporary structures called sentry shacks were placed at various locations near the dam during construction.
We kept tools in those, and then there was a watchman around there on duty about all the time. We had tools and some, and then you had a separate place you kept dynamite, and different things that you work with.
The undertaking of this massive project required working day and night around the clock. A unique method, portable light towers, was used to illuminate the construction site at night.
The source of the lights was not moved, but they had towers that they did skid around. It did skid around place to place. They had to do that because if they filled one place and they had a tower sitting over here to shed light, we worked day and night. See, there was 24 hours. So you had to have a tower that was portable. It's a big light on it that the workers could see what they were doing. So they were put on skids.
The malaria epidemic was bad all back before they ever built the dam. Of course, we had this swamp down here in Mingo, and then all these ditches and sloughs. But even during drought and dry years, malaria was here. A big thing that was malaria causing that then was the water system. People would just sink these picture pumps down 15, 20 feet and start pumping that water out and drinking it,
The Great Flood of 1945 was forever etched in the minds of those who witnessed it.
The lake only has a capacity of 40 feet of depth of water from the inlet weir at the head of the discharge tunnel, which was elevation 355, and the overflow spillway was at 395. So the lake only had 40 feet of capacity. Either the Corps of Engineers or the weather forecasters failed to anticipate the excessive amount of rainfall we had that particular year, and the lake overflowed across that emergency spillway. Nothing could be done about it. There was no place else for the water to go. So all of our careful work on the downstream side of that emergency spillway was destroyed in a day or so when the lake started overflowing.
We were trying to hold the water back off of the people down below, and we let the lake get away up around 380 feet. And at that time, we weren't letting to but about 5,000 or 6,000 cubic feet per second, and we raised it up to 10,000, and it come about a 4 or 5 inch rain up on the upper watershed, and we saw we were in trouble, and so they told us to let it go at 10,000 until it reached spillway elevation. Well, it went over. I think it went about 5 or 6 feet over the spillway and over 20,000 cubic feet per second. We had the gates completely closed, and it got about twice as much water over the spillway as would normally have to go through. I worked 55 hours overtime the first 2 weeks it was over the spillway, and run a boat and set people across the doctors and the mail. I took them in a motorboat from hill to hill. Most enjoyable memory I had was getting a job and working, and they let me and my wife live in the mess hall. She did the cooking, and the people that eat paid her 35 cents a meal, and they let us live in that rent-free. And also I was working at drawing $9.60 a year, so we had a good job, and I enjoyed it, and they were good to me. I look back on my job, and I appreciate what the Corps of Engineers did for me. They gave me a job when I needed it, and they sent me to different schools, and like, for example, I was sent to Vicksburg, Mississippi one time to study putting down of asphalt, and they paid me per dime while I was gone, and I learned a lot working for the Corps, and I appreciate what the Corps of Engineers did for me.
I tell you, I worked there for so many years. I had a good job, and it makes me proud to see these areas. They've done a lot of improvements since I retired. So you can go down into Peoples Creek or any of the areas like Shawnee Landing, and it makes you proud that know that you've been a part of that time and during that construction. All them things, it makes you happy.
I don't know. I guess I'd want to say that the finish of it, to stand back and see what had been done by so many people, different things, during the job, and it was something to brag about. See that from what it looked like when you first started, and I saw the start of it, or the first tree was cut, and just no comparison. It's just something you can't hardly explain, but it was wonderful.
I was always very much impressed with the capability and the efficiency of the Corps of Engineers that we had to work for. They were very thorough, and however very demanding, which they should have been, of course. I have a feeling and sense of pride in that I was involved in the construction of it, and it is a popular area. It afforded me the kind of work that I liked at that time. I have no regrets.
Our lake has come so far from what we did, it's anymore, of course, we have to get more of an appropriation, but our lake has got so much nicer parking areas and boat launches and everything. Most people are proud of the lake, and it's a great recreation place for fishermen and the young people. Plus, it still has a big bearing on the water control below us. Plus, this lake has got to be turned loose when it gets at a certain level, because if it goes over the spillway, it's going to flood a lot more people. And it does a lot in the water control, I'm sure.
In creating Wappapello Dam, the Corps of Engineers also created a wonderful place for more than 2 million people a year to enjoy water sports and other great outdoor activities.